Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or as we like to say here at Shady Acres Woodshop, howdy. Today I have a piece of wood that Dave and his wife Clarissa from Calmwood Creations sent to me. Thank you, Dave and Clarissa, I truly appreciate that. This is a piece of English Laurel. When Dave sent it to me, it was about 2.5 inches longer than it is now. I cut 2.5 inches off of this end because there was a pretty good sized crack in here. And I did trim the other end up just slightly, like 1/8 of an inch. So what we have here now is roughly a 9.5 inch square, although it doesn't look square because it's not, but roughly 9.5 inches. It's 3.5 inches thick on this end, 4 inches thick on this end. I've been asked how I balance pieces, how I decide to mount them on the lathe, how I go about the process. I wish there was a good straight answer. There's not. It involves some marking. You know, find the center, corner to corner. Check it to see if it's equal side to side and end to end, and that's what this mark is. Then I balanced it, and that's what this mark is, and those two marks are about 3/4 of an inch apart, and the second mark on balancing is slightly this way, about 1/8 of an inch off of this center and about 3/4 of an inch that way. So this is the measured center, this is the balanced center. Okay, so now what? Well, now you have to look at the piece. This is my process. You probably have a lot better one than I do. I look at the piece and I say, okay, what am I going to do? This is the top. This is going to be a bowl. This is going to be hollowed out, so I'm going to have a circle in here somewhere. But what's going to happen on the outside? I'm going to round it up on the outside. Am I going to round it until it's completely round, until it's a circle? Yeah, that's not really the way I do things. Sometimes, you know, and I might end up doing that. But I tend to like to leave natural as nature intended. So I'm thinking I'll have a point here and a point here. These 2 points are lower than those two. So I don't really know quite what's going to happen with those. They won't come up as high. If I round this up, we might not do away with a square end on either end. I don't know. I like to leave a little bark in there if I can. I just don't know. And then you have to consider, okay, so if this is the balance point and you start turning it and you start removing wood, then that balance is going to change. And it's going to become, if it's balanced here now, it's going to be out of balance by the time you get it round. So that's something else to consider. So which way is it going to go? Is this going to come off? Is this 4 inches down here going to be less than 3.5 is now? I mean, you just have to consider all that stuff. And it's a lot of guesswork. I don't have, like I said, I don't have a good answer. It's kind of guesswork. But you have to start somewhere. So, measured center, balanced center, I'm going to go in the middle. Probably not real helpful. That's my center. That's in between the 2 points. So I've marked my center, my new center now, and I'm gonna get a 5/16 drill bit in my drill, and I'm gonna drill a hole for my 3/8 inch woodworm screw, and we'll get mounted up on the lathe, and we'll get to turning this piece of English Laurel. Now, I've never turned Laurel before, never had it in my hand, so I don't know what to expect. I'm starting with my 5/8 inch standard grind bowl gouge, and we're going to be turning. I guess I did well in guessing the midway point at 1200 RPM because this piece is very much in balance right now. But as you can see, maybe there's about 3/4 of an inch gap between the tool rest and the bottom of the piece here, and over here there's about 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to be taking a lot more off of this side, which would seem to indicate that it's going to be out of balance rather than in balance soon. And that's kind of a pain in the neck. Let me get my mask and face shield on and we'll get to it. I'm going to start by just flattening off the bottom. It occurs to me at the beginning of the video when I was talking about balancing the piece, I didn't show how I balanced the piece, and I'm sorry about that. Kathy asked me how do I balance them, and I said, well, I take a 1/2 inch dowel. That's not actually quite true. I've got these bench dogs that go with my workbench over here, fit in the hole so you can clamp a piece on top of the workbench. Anyway, they're just sitting there, so they're always handy. So what I do is I clamp it in the vise like this, and then I balance the piece on top of that. This is about a 1/2 inch diameter. It doesn't matter. A wood dowel would work just fine. Anyway, and then I just move it around until it sits on there. And then I get underneath and I mark around that with a pencil. And then the middle of that is my balance point. Well, we probably got this far enough flat. I can start working on the side here. So that's what I'll do. I'll just start working this corner away. I don't really want to go past these top points, at least for now. I might change my mind. We might end up with a full round bowl. I have no idea. But for now, I want to stop up here, right here. I don't want to necessarily make it completely round at this point. Gotta grab a glove. That hurts. I'm just checking these points. This was the most pointy of the points, and I'm there. This one, of course, is one of the short ones, as was this one, but these two are now about equal. So now is when you have to decide what do you want to do. I've got a flat spot here and a flat spot here. I've got nature over here, bark and just a natural side, and then this side has a saw cut on it. So it just takes, you know, it just takes some thinking about what is it you're trying to accomplish here, and I don't have a good idea of that right now. This wood turns real nice, I can tell you that. It's heavy wood. I measured the moisture content at 6%, which is pretty dang dry for this area. We're lucky to get to 10% most of the time. So I'm thinking, I think I'm going to have to round it up more, so this point will go away or move anyway. I also have to do something about the bottom and get a tenon on down there. It could be that that's what I should do now. I think I'll round up this corner a little more right here, the bottom corner, round that into the side, because this is just way too big for a base. I probably should go sharpen up, but I'll try it a little more. Well, I'm going to keep going because this side, which is the lowest side, is too low in my opinion. Needs to be up higher. Otherwise you have kind of an odd shaped bowl on the top. It doesn't look so good. Also, this side here that has the rough saw cuts on it, that doesn't look so good. So I'm going to keep going. We might end up just plain old round bowl. I don't know yet. So I'm going to start working on the bottom now, and I'm just going to remove that little nub so that I can make a tenon and make a base for this to sit on. Now the base isn't going to be this big. I made it large like that because I'm going to come about halfway into it and still continue up the side here. Yeah, I'm going to get rid of these flat ends. They just don't look good. You just never know. And I'm just going to take this diamond point tool and square up the sides of the tenon. And we're ready for sanding. Well, this should be pretty straightforward sanding. There's no bark or inclusions or anything like that to deal with for the outside. The top will be different, but I'm just going to start with my 2-inch sanding disc with an 80 grit disc on there. And I'll start sanding in reverse. I'll alternate between forward and reverse as I go through the steps up to 400 grit. And the lathe is turning at about 350 RPM. So that's what it's going to look like for the next half hour or so as I step through the grits. And I'll bring you back when it's time to put some finish on here. This wood sands up so nice. It's just glass smooth, and that's not an exaggeration. It's just amazing. So partly because of that, I'm applying Howard Feed and Wax. It's just a one-step process, and I like that as well. Put it on and wipe it off, and you're done. But I don't think anything can improve on this finish, the sanded finish. So I'm going to let this set for about 20 minutes. It's kind of a nice, not exactly warm, but maybe 60-degree day. So this will dry pretty quickly. I'll buff it up. And then it'll be time to turn it around, start hollowing it out. Looking forward to that. So I'll see you back here in just a bit. I thought you might enjoy a close-up look at this. I'm just trying to convey how smooth the finish is. It's just smooth, that's all. There's not a lot going on in the grain, yet somehow it's subtle. It's pretty nice. I just wish you could feel this piece. Feels like silk sheets. Okay, time to turn it around and hollow it out. So it's on a woodworm screw, so I'm just going to lock my spindle in place and try and unscrew it. Oh, really tight. Some folks are intimidated by woodworm screws. They don't think they're going to hold, but I'll tell you what, I've never had one come off, ever. We'll get the tenon in here. Looks like I made it a little bit too big. It'll fit, but it's not optimal. And then, as I always like to do, I bring up the live center and just leave the chuck jaws loose, and then use the live center to drive that tenon into the chuck jaws and then tighten it up. And that way I know it's well centered and well seated and it's not gonna come loose. And it looks like we are ready to go. I'll be turning at, well, I don't know at what. Let's find out. 1500 RPM. I'm going to sharpen up my 5/8 inch bowl gouge, get my mask and face shield on, and we'll get to it. There's a couple of places here, right here. This is a big old knot. It's about 3 inches long so far. We're not to the bottom of it yet. And that's just giving me a hard time. And then I think this is another one over here. Probably, yeah, I guess the other side of it. I just can't. This is some hard wood. I can't get a good cut. Once I get down into this area here, then it's okay. Across the bottom, but boy, I'm probably going to run into that again a little bit deeper. Well, that's a thicker wall than I normally like. It's about 3/8 of an inch, but I think that's what we're going to go with. And I'm going to check my bottom thickness. I'm sure I'm not there yet, but well, that's about a 1/4 inch. So I am about there. I'm going to grab my scraper and start scraping. I don't have a really good edge on here, but let's see how it does. Oh, it does pretty good. That's how it does. We're good. Time for sanding. So I'm sanding in reverse. That's why I'm on this side. I'll alternate between the reverse and forward. And I'll also alternate the direction of my drill as I'm sanding. I want the leading edge to go against the rotation of the piece. So as this piece is coming up on that side, this is coming down on the leading edge. That just gives it a more efficient sanding action. I'm starting at 80 grit, 350 RPM on the lathe, and I'll bring you back when it's time to put some finish on here. This is the Howard Feed and Wax again, just like I put on the outside. It's a one-step, one application process. I've put it on more than once before and it seems to have no effect whatsoever. So I just put on one coat and that's that. And it dries fairly quickly, about 20 minutes. Come back out, buff it up, and you're done. Well, there's one thing about wood that's this hard, and this is hard. It just polishes up so nice. As far as sanding it, it's just really smooth. It's kind of an odd shaped ball. I'm not sure that I'm in love with it. See what it looks like once it's finally standing upright. I'll let that set up and I'll see you back here in just half an hour, 20 minutes, half hour. See you in a bit. Okay, I've mounted this block of wood up in my chuck. Then I'm going to put this piece of non-slip cloth over that and then bring up the bowl and the tailstock. I still have my center hole there for reference, so we'll just advance the ram and apply a little pressure, and we'll spin it up a little bit and see if it's running true. And it is. So I'll turn the speed up to about 600 RPM and grab this 3/8 inch standard grind bowl gouge and begin to remove the tenon. Check for clearance. We have good clearance. I like to leave this little button, this little 2-inch remainder of the tenon intact if I can. Just adds a little bit of interest. But I see I have marks from the gripping of the chuck jaws. So I need to kind of clean that up just a touch. Yeah, that looks good. I'm going to take my homemade point tool and delineate a little line between the finished part of the bowl and that little button I was talking about. Just put a little groove in there, not much. Makes it look like it's on purpose that way. Now I feel like I have that little nub remaining there small enough. So now I'm going to switch to a 3/8 inch swept back gouge and complete the cut on the lathe here. I'm going to slow the speed down about 300 RPM. I still need to just clear out a little material here before I can get in there and make the final cut. I'm just making room for the gouge to get in. Okay, and that ought to do it. So now I'm going to turn the speed down to about 200, and with the bevel of the gouge against the bottom of the bowl, right hand on the gouge, left hand on the switch, I'm just applying pressure towards the headstock, so that when that little nub stops turning and we know we're through, at least the gouge is still holding the bowl on the lathe. There we go. That's what we're looking for. I'll just go sand up this little 2-inch area over here on the workbench. Well, here it is, one English Laurel bowl in the books. As it turns out, I do like it. I wasn't so sure that I was going to. I can't say that I love it, but I do like it. When you see it off the lathe and standing upright, it looks a little better than it did on the lathe. It's so smooth, I just wish you were here to feel it. I guess the green isn't spectacular, but on the other hand, it's pretty nice. There's the bottom all finished up. It's a nice piece. Thanks Dave and Clarissa for sending this to me. If you like this video, thumbs up please, I'd sure appreciate it. If you're a subscriber, thank you very kindly, I truly appreciate that. If you're not a subscriber, you might consider becoming one. I put out regular videos about one a week, and I'd like to keep in touch. Your comments are always welcome, and I respond to all of them. So for now, this is Phil, Shady Acres Woodshop, signing off.